Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live on the POSTCAST following the Timberwolves win over the LA Lakers. Marney Gellner from Bally Sports North joins the show to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm joined by Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North. We're going to talk about the Timberwolves win over the Los Angeles Lakers. And Marney, this was a strong win for the Timberwolves, a really important one in the Western Conference playoff race. The Wolves are now just a half game out of the sixth spot, and they now have the tiebreaker over the Lakers for the season series in case it comes down to that. And I think the best way to summarize this one in a phrase, I guess, is just kind of a solid, well-rounded win for Minnesota. Pretty much, second quarter on, they controlled the majority of the game, played well on both ends of the floor. Just a really, really nice win.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. It was not the Anthony Edwards game. It was a really well-balanced, all five starters, all four bench players. Like, it was just well distributed. There weren't these giant surges of the Wolves surging up and, letting the Lakers surge on them. It was just a really well played game. I mean, they rose to that occasion. I get it. LA was depleted. LeBron didn't play. D'Angelo Russell didn't play. That's fine. The Wolves still managed to play well enough to get this win on what exactly was a very important game, a very important win.
Yeah, and no LeBron, no D'Lo, but I mean, the Lakers, Anthony Davis had 38 in this game and did a lot of damage very early in the game and ended up with 6 turnovers. He only had 5 rebounds, and I think a lot of those were in the first quarter too. He made a lot of noise right out of the gate. Rudy Gobert got into some foul trouble. There was a little bit of it teetered there for a little bit, just in regards to, like, the Lakers got off to such a hot start from the field, and that was kind of, I mean, that was the story of early in the game. The Lakers made 8 of their first 10 shots from the field. But some of them were just tough shots that they made difficult shots, and the Wolves kind of kept it up defensively, and the defensive effort never really waned in this game. It was really consistent for the Wolves. And I think if I had to pick one thing, the lead thing to talk about would be the Timberwolves defense overall, especially on the perimeter, but also interior defense. I thought across the board, they played really, really well defensively, held the Lakers to 102 points on just a shade under 42% shooting. And outside of Anthony Davis being really hot early in the game, the Wolves defense was really, really good.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about Jaden McDaniels' block on Dennis Schroeder, like from the side on a deep two, just a sort of a non-traditional block. Anthony Edwards underneath the hoop. I want to say that one was like first quarter. Like, there were just some nice defensive plays, some good defense leading to offense, leading to fast breaks. The Wolves had 26 fast break points tonight. They average about 15 per game this season. So they almost doubled it tonight. It was pretty significant. I think the Lakers had 10. So if you want to look at, like, categories where the Wolves might have won this game, that would be one. And it would be because of doing little things on defense, making blocks, just being able to turn that into offense and just kind of get up and down and play a good pace, even knowing you got a game tomorrow night and you're on the road and you're traveling tonight, and that's not easy. Sometimes the tendency is to just save a little bit of juice, whether it's intentional or unintentional, but I don't feel like the Wolves were conserving anything tonight. They just went all out, and it showed in areas like that, like in fast break points.
Yeah, and the Lakers like to play fast too. I mean, the Lakers and Wolves are both top 5 teams in terms of pace, and Minnesota beat the Lakers at their own game. And again, bears repeating, the Lakers, yes, they were shorthanded, but so were the Wolves. So, I think the Wolves really did force the issue in a good way in terms of pace in this game. And going back to defense, I mean, the Timberwolves, this was I actually talked about this a little bit on Friday's episode of Locked On Wolves. I thought the Wolves might put McDaniels on Schroeder, but switch everything. It's exactly what they did in this game. Is McDaniels came out mostly guarding Dennis Schroeder because, I mean, he is kind of where the offense at least starts with this Lakers team missing so many players. And then the idea is that, at least for the Lakers, that, Malik Beasley plays off of that. Obviously Anthony Davis, but also Malik Beasley and Troy Brown, has had a couple nice games. But the Wolves switched everything defensively, and McDaniels and Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson, all those guys were pretty just freely switching with one another. Schroeder ended up scoring just 6 points on 3 of 13 shooting in this game. He had 12 assists and no turnovers, but it's because the Wolves were forcing him into really difficult shots or simply making him give the ball up. McDaniels deserves a ton of credit for that. Beasley finished with 15 points, but it never really felt like he got going in the way that Wolves fans have seen Malik Beasley get going in the past, both for them and against them. So I think it's a lot of McDaniels and Edwards on the perimeter, just their length, exactly what we've seen so frequently over the past several games, especially, and it's been much talked about, and rightfully so, but that was so impressive in this game, just kind of dictating everything the Lakers were doing. So I think McDaniels and Edwards, and also the Wolves' defensive game plan, deserve a lot of credit in this one.
I thought so too, and it was almost like a carbon copy of the effort that the Wolves had defensively on Tuesday against the Clippers. There's that clip that I must have seen from 8 different people on Twitter of Jaden McDaniels denying Paul George just the pass at the top of the key, and how that forced Russell Westbrook to take that bad shot, and just kind of the trickle-down effect of simply playing good defense. And whether it's on Paul George or Dennis Schroeder, like, the results are the same. And when it's not just Jaden McDaniels, when you add an Anthony Edwards on the perimeter, and when you add a Rudy Gobert in the paint, and everybody's on their A game defensively, and everybody's bringing that same kind of effort and intensity, and Kyle Anderson looked like Kyle Anderson again. Like, these last 2 games in particular on the defensive end have just been like, yes, that's the recipe. That's when this team, when this team is locked in defensively, like they have been these last 2 games, the whole thing is locked in. The whole thing just runs so much better.
Yeah, Jace Frederick at the Pioneer Press tweeted this out just a few minutes ago. The Timberwolves have held 3 straight opponents below 43% shooting from the field. And then he said, for reference, teams across the league have shot under 43% in a game just 20% of games this season. And that's 3 consecutive games. The Wolves have held opponents below 43% shooting. Obviously, the opponent matters a little, but I mean, they've also played the Clippers were really at full strength Tuesday, and they played the Warriors on Sunday, who, yes, were shorthanded, but still, I mean, this is such an impressive stretch of defense, and obviously McDaniels and Edwards especially deserve a lot of credit. But in general, the Wolves have just been so good as a team defensively lately. In addition to that, I thought that the Timberwolves centers were kind of the other storyline of this game. Rudy Gobert got into some foul trouble pretty early. Then Naz Reid came in and had a really strong first stint. Gobert came back in late second quarter, and then throughout the early part of the third quarter, really had a couple dominant stretches. Gobert did, where he dominated on both ends of the floor, affected a number of shots that weren't blocks, had a couple of impressive blocks, and had a really nice left-handed throwdown at one point over Mo Bamba. Just a really strong game on both ends. And then Naz in his next stint, when Gobert picked up his 4th foul, played really well also. Their combined stats in this game were extremely impressive. And yes, Anthony Davis scored 38 points, but that matters a lot less when nobody else on the Lakers scores. They only had 3 players total score in double figures. And again, as a team, shot 42% from the field. But I mean, Naz and Rudy were fantastic in this game for the Wolves.
Yeah, they were. There are times when one of them has to pick up the slack for the other, or when Rudy's been hurt, missing games kind of periodically because of the groin issue, that Naz has had to be great. But this was a game where they were just kind of like high-fiving as like tag team wrestlers as they were on the court, off the court, and kind of distributing, carrying the load equally. I mean, Rudy with the 22 and 14, he also had 3 blocks. He also had 3 steals. Naz rebounded the ball really well. I think he finished with 6 rebounds. And he's just so skilled. He's such a joy to watch when he puts that in and out move. I think I called for it tonight, but I would argue against that whistle. It just, when you have the complement and that position doesn't drop off really noticeably at all, I just feel like, man, that is something that a lot of teams would love to have. And I would agree with you, Ben. I feel like the Wolves had it tonight. That was a good game by the Bigs.
Tonight's postcast is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season has come and gone, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Of course, a big weekend of basketball. The Wolves are back at it again Saturday against the Kings, so go check out the spread there. Obviously prop bets, the whole thing. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Another thing, Marney, that I thought was notable was the rotation in general was shortened to 9 players. Of course, Jalen Noel was still out with the knee issue. He's missed, I think, 3 consecutive games now. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker has mostly picked up those minutes. We've seen a little Austin Rivers lately. But in this game, Rivers didn't get off the bench. The Timberwolves Chris Finch only played 9 players, and they all played 17 or more minutes. This was actually a pretty well-balanced rotation. And I think everybody pretty much played well in this game for the Wolves. I wonder if this is, and who knows when Noel comes back, if he reclaims some of those minutes. But Alexander Walker has played really well defensively. He's been active offensively. He's a little more aggressive than I was expecting him to be with the ball in his hands, but I think for the most part has made good choices with the ball. But we're seeing perhaps a shortening of the rotation here moving forward for the Wolves.
That probably is true, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You always hear about coaches shortening their rotations when you get into the playoffs, and for all intents and purposes, these last, I think we're down to 17 games now. I mean, you might as well treat this like a playoff. They're as close to must win as we're going to get for a stretch of time here. And barring any injuries, I guess you have the luxury of being able to handpick your guys. And, you have the bench. Like Taurean Prince had a really nice game off the bench tonight. Jordan McLaughlin had 6 assists and no turnovers, looking like J-Mac. So I feel like when you do shorten your rotation, guys know when they're playing a little bit more. They know their rhythm a little bit more. They can kind of settle in to be the best sort of versions of themselves or give you the best production. And it's something the team can start to count on. The coaching staff can start to count on. The players themselves can. There's just something that falls into place better, I feel like, when you do shorten a rotation and it's more predictable on both ends by the coaches knowing what's happening and the players knowing what's happening. So maybe that's a good thing if this team can stay as healthy, don't lose anybody else to this point, then maybe that's something that we can just almost count on. Yep, these are the 9. This is the production we're going to get. A couple guys play up, a couple guys play down, but for the most part, this is it. We can rely on it. Then now let's go. Now let's get one of those top 6 seeds.
Yeah, and of course, when Karl-Anthony Towns returns, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, there will be something of a shuffle, and who knows what that means. Probably less time for Naz Reid, maybe a little less for Taurean Prince. But, I mean, who knows?
I specifically avoided saying that, Ben, because I didn't want to have to talk about that.
I know.
There's so many unknowns. It's you can't even throw that out there because it just puts a wrench, a good one, but it's not even worth talking about till we have a timeline.
I know. And, Kyle Anderson actually, I guess Anthony Edwards played 36 minutes in this game. Kyle Anderson played 35. He's been playing a lot of minutes, and maybe that's where some of those minutes come from. I mean, I think it's not like, I don't think anybody comes out of the rotation. I think it's more everybody plays a little bit less, which is ultimately a good thing as you get late in the season. So there will certainly be an adjustment period, but when we get to that point here, hopefully pretty soon, that'll be something Chris Finch will work through. Last thing to talk about, Mike Conley has had a relatively quiet start to his Timberwolves career. Of course, he's not been, the scorer that he was at one point in his career throughout the year, even back when he was with Utah prior to the trade. But in this game, he had a couple of big shots late after I thought he had a pretty quiet start to this game as well. But I'm going back and looking, and I guess this is the second. I guess he scored 15 in that loss to Charlotte last Friday, but he had 14 in this game, the second most points he scored in a Wolves uniform, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. 6 of 11 shooting, a solid all-around game from Conley. And like I said, a couple big shots late, and really good defense was part of that strong perimeter defense in this game. But good to see Mike Conley get a little bit more involved overall.
Yeah, and I wonder how much lift he got from the 2 big shots he made. The 3-pointer was with like a minute 13 maybe left on the clock, and then a little jump shot there to kind of seal things. Those were really important shots in really important moments where I would assume the preference for Conley, if you just kind of removed all factors, the preference would probably be to defer. I'm going to set somebody up. I'm going to give someone the perfect pass, and that is the way I would love to play the final minute of the game. But it was open. The shots were open for him, especially that 3-pointer. And man, it was really good to see how confidently he drained that. And I wonder if that'll lift his offensive game a little bit here, even if it's in just the near future, even if it just unlocks him a little bit for tomorrow night, would be helpful for the Timberwolves. I don't think he's played bad by any means. I don't expect the big offensive numbers, but a little bit more at times would not be a bad thing.
Agreed. The Clippers, Jazz, and Pelicans all lost on Friday night. The Timberwolves, of course, won. The Wolves also have the tiebreaker over the Clippers. The Wolves are currently in 7th in the West. They're half game up on the Clippers plus the tiebreaker. They're a half game behind Dallas. They also have that tiebreaker, and now they'll own the tiebreaker over the LA Lakers, the Lakers are still in 11th in the West. They're a full game behind the Pelicans in 10th. The logjam continues, but the Wolves are starting to pick up these tiebreakers, currently owning the Mavs, Clippers, Lakers, a chance to pull even with the Jazz and the Pelicans still yet this season in terms of tiebreakers. So it's still a jumbled mess, but things are trending in the right direction for Minnesota. Of course, they get the Kings. The Kings, by the way, beat the Clippers by a single point on Friday night. So they'll both be on a back-to-back, Wolves and Kings, Saturday night in Sacramento. So the Wolves will close out their 4 games in California Saturday at Sacramento. We'll, of course, go live following that game as well. We go live after I think the rest of the way, pretty much every Wolves game the rest of the way, about 45 minutes or so after the game's over on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to be notified when we go live. You can also listen to the audio on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we post that after the fact if you can't watch live. A big thank you for listening to the show. A big thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.